Josh, do you get a good breakfast in the morning?
No, I only have generally just coffee.
Well, would you consider yourself an intermittent faster then?
Yeah, I would say so. I only have lunch and then later.
Yeah.
Oh, not a good sign.
It is not a good sign because a recent study came out and it is saying that intermittent fasting is leading to a higher chance of you having heart disease heart disease.
Yeah, I thought intermittent fasting. I thought a lot of people before said it was good to do.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing because come to find out they were surprised. The researchers who were looking into this were surprised at their findings. And their findings show that like 91% were having like more an increase in heart disease. So their thing is that their eating range of 12 to 16 hours per day. You know, so if you eat only for 8 hours a day, 12 to 16 hours, so there's 24 hours a day, and you only eat for 8 hours, so you don't eat in the first half of the day, then you would have a higher risk. So
I think that's very common though. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people who are working, don't have enough time in the day to like make a proper breakfast.
Yeah,
Because they have to go. Because as soon as I wake up, it's like I'm like, okay, I need to go to
out the door.
yeah, I'm out the door. Make myself a coffee or make a coffee at work. But yeah, a lot of the times it's like not enough time for breakfast.
Yeah, and I do wonder because, like you said, they were saying that it could improve your cardiometabolic health measures such as blood pressure, blood glucose, and cholesterol levels. And that's what they originally said for intermittent fasting, and which is what I thought was happening because like, oh, you're in a fasted state and it should be healthier for you. And we'll continue talking more about this subject after you consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button. We talk about interesting topics like this one daily. So if you want to stay up to date on interesting topics like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So I used to do intermittent fasting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like purposefully. I would skip breakfast. Like I would want breakfast. I'd be hungry, and then I'd just eat like a lunch, and then like snacks and stuff, and then dinner, and that's all I would have. And I was like, oh,
That's good. Yeah.
you'd be better off,
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind that was that if you're in a fasted state, your blood glucose would obviously go down because your body is being forced to use up the resources that it already has in it. So you like, oh, it'll start trying to, use the glucose in your blood, lowering your blood glucose.
Yeah, and you know what? Like you doing purposefully is good, but I think like a majority of people don't do this purposefully. I feel like a lot of people are like in similar situations like me where they wake up and then they have to go to work and typically they just pick up a coffee on the way. Not even a donut on the way.
Not even a donut
for their coffee, but I do think it is simple enough just to have like a banana or an apple on your way. But at the same time, it's like I do think it's easier to rationalize. It's like, okay, it's like I'll have my coffee now, then I'll go have my lunch, and then I'll just have dinner. But this not being the healthiest option, because there's a lot of risks now to it, or there has been risks now that the researchers have found. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening. But yes, it makes me rethink of how I should spend my mornings.
Yeah, I do wonder because like maybe their thinking is that when you eat between less hours of the day, your metabolism isn't on the whole time. Like as soon as you start eating, like you're going to start turning that machine on and you're starting to burn calories versus like, oh, if you just eat like big meals, because they don't specify exactly how big their meals are. So maybe they're eating like really heavily. Like I feel like maybe people who forego or skip a breakfast, do you have a large lunch and dinner then?
Not necessarily.
Really?
Plus, also sometimes I work out in the mornings.
Okay,
so
so
it's even worse. It's even
worse.
worse. It's even worse because I go on until lunch without eating or just having a
Interesting.
coffee.
Because I wonder if that's the thing though, where they're eating larger portions late for a shorter amount of time, so their stomach and their intestines are having to work overtime to like process a large volume versus like a smaller volume like in the morning, and then smaller volume for lunch, and then smaller volume for dinner, versus like just two really big meals. You know?
It's interesting. It's interesting to think about because I believe from what I remember, it's good to have like a bigger lunch and then a smaller dinner.
Yeah.
So you have the calories to burn throughout the day, and then what is it? And then you're supposed to have like a small size or a good sized breakfast.
Yeah.
That's why people say breakfast is the most important part of the day. But clearly, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of showing that we should be. Yeah. So, like I said before, 91% higher risk of death by cardiovascular disease for people that ate for less than 8 hours per day. So, like 8 hour time frame of eating. And then if you ate between 8 and 10 hours per day, you'd still have a 66% higher risk of death from heart disease. So that, I mean,
These are frightening studies.
yeah, I'm
Frightening
like, wait a
figures.
second.
Yeah.
Because that is really difficult, because trying to find the time to eat in the morning is kind of tough to start. And then by the time you get to work, you're already kind of doing something, or you're in a meeting, or you're trying to figure out something, and you're not really thinking about, getting your calories in. And I mean, because like the thing you also suggested was that like, oh, like they couldn't get even a donut. I'm like, wait, but a donut is not the most healthy thing to have in the morning
it's
either.
not. It's not. I think a banana would be good, but at the same time, I think it's probably better for you to have something in your stomach than just coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, coffee is good, but also can be bad, because coffee, or well, caffeine is will dehydrate you.
Oh, you're right.
So if you think like, oh, I'm not getting, like, that's the other thing also, is that like you typically don't drink enough water per day, even if you drink coffee, because you're dehydrating yourself.
It's interesting you say that, because I've tried to be more cognizant of the amount of water that I drink per day, because I do drink coffee, but overall, it does make me rethink about how I should schedule my mornings, because because prior to this, I did hear that intermittent fasting was good. It's like overall, there's not too much things that are bad for you, but at the same time, it's like, okay, now it's showing like there's a lot of health risk applied to risks that come with that. So I think it would be easy enough for anyone just to get a banana. Bananas are like less than $1. They're a few, like 10 cents or 15 cents, I think, at Trader Joe's. So it's easy enough just to pick one up and be like, okay, I'm having this for breakfast, or a yogurt or something.
The wild thing is that you would think that people with or that did intermittent fasting would be, like slimmer, because like it's a whole mentality of like, oh, I want to lose weight or like be healthier, so I would intermittent fast. So it seems that, at least according to the study that they did, a lot of the people who are actually, like, you would think like your perception of intermittent people, like fasting people, would be kind of healthier. So it would actually be slightly off. So their patients, the fasting patients, were more likely to be younger men with a higher BMI, so body mass index, and food insecurity. And they had a lower prevalence of hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease based on self-reporting. But even after all of this, they still had a higher cardiovascular mortality rate. So that they're like, this is kind of weird, where there is a disconnect from what the biomarkers are like. Still, like, oh, like for all intents and purposes, they had lower hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, but in the end, they still suffered from cardiovascular mortality rate.
Oh yeah, that's not good at all.
And they're like, wait a second. So from what we're like gauging and like measuring, they're like, oh, even though it looks like you're pretty much healthy, you still would we're like getting basically said you're this not good. You're not actually healthy. So I wonder if there is another health marker that we're not looking at. And it might be kind of seen through the study because like intermittent fasting for all intents and purposes and what they've seen is that it makes you look healthy in terms of the tests, but in terms of practice, what they're seeing is that you actually still die or a higher chance of dying from these things.
Yeah, no, that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie because I'm unfortunately doing that.
I mean, not by choice,
Not
but
by choice. Yes.
and I feel like that's probably for the most case with a lot of people is that not by choice, but I do wonder what the study is going to reveal further because right now it's just been a kind of a study that's been talked about, but the actual report has not been released. So once that reports get released, we may or may not, I mean, depending on how crazy the results are, we might talk about it again in another update, but let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you intermittent fast on purpose? Do you intermittent fast not on purpose? Let us know your thoughts or your experiences down below.